the Sports Renegades podcast on SportstownChicago.com.
Outside Decker. It's a three. Got it! Dagger! 27 for Decker.
And the way he shot it and walked away.
Shot clock to 7. Long three-pointer. Oh, you've seen it before. Aaron Harrison buries a three, and Kentucky is on top.
Costello was a defensive presence then.
Sure was, and 3 green shirts defensively.
Michigan State on top.
Well, Forbes shot it at 43% on the season. Does he ever know how to run the floor?
Tough shot.
He's hit it every single game. The big shot. Every game during the tournament, just this big shot Winslow hits another.
Renegade, never been afraid to say what's on my mind at any given time of day, cause I'm a renegade. Never been afraid to talk about anything. Renegade, never been afraid to say what's
Welcome
on my mind
into the Sports Renegades here on SportstownChicago.com. I'm Ryan Stuprich.
And I'm Ryan Risky.
And this is the Sports Renegades, as I said, broadcasting live here 6 to 8 p.m. And if you heard our intro, we talked about the Final Four, as we are in the Final Four. Wisconsin is there for the second straight year. Kentucky is there for the second straight year.
You know, how many times has it happened where there's 3 number 1 seeds in the Final Four?
It doesn't happen an awful lot.
Usually there's only 1 at most.
Right. Of course, the only number 1 seed that got upset, and that was all the way back in the second round, was Villanova.
And I called that they'd lose in the second round, too. I called that one.
Yeah, because they tend to not have a very good tournament resume as far as wins. They don't seem to get a whole lot of wins in the tournament. I mean, they do great in the regular season. I think they only had 2 or 3 losses going into the NCAA tournament, but then
DePaul didn't beat them, did they?
No. They were up by 5 at halftime at home and then lost by 13. So that was a fun game to go to for the first half.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be a good game when you're just like that crowd's got to always be in it when you're playing a team like that.
Yeah, the small 2,000 people crowd. But anyway, the Final Four matchups for this Saturday at just after 5 o'clock p.m. Central Time. Michigan State and Duke face off. That'll be the first game from Indianapolis. And Duke is favored in that game. They're currently, I mean, it's only Thursday, but they're 5-point favorites.
Oh, well, they're going to win. I mean, it's
that
Duke.
Seems about right. We'll see if Michigan State's magic can continue, as they were only 27 and 11 and 12 and 6 in the Big Ten, and they lost to Illinois at home. So that was a bad loss for Michigan State earlier in the season. But yeah, Duke's a 5-point favorite. I'll be rooting for Michigan State, but I'm confident Duke will probably win that game. It'll go down to the wire, though. Michigan State always plays really well, especially in these type of situations. And anytime they make it to the tournament, they're always, you should always be scared to play them. And then the second game and these games are both on TBS. The second game is Wisconsin against Kentucky. And this is going to be the more exciting, dramatic one. As last year, Wisconsin only lost by a point. I think they lost 74-73 to Kentucky after, I think it was Aaron Harrison hit 3 to put Kentucky up with only 2 seconds left.
I mean, the television networks that love this, 2 number 1 seeds going at it. Kentucky having to beat a number 1 seed to get back to the finals, and apparently Chris Bryant hit a home run today. Just thought I'd throw that out.
Of course he did. We'll talk more about that, as he had some very interesting comments. I was listening to ESPN 1000 on my way down here. He had some interesting comments. He's pretty upset about being brought down. But we'll talk more about that in the next segment.
Yeah, just thought I'd throw out he hit another home run.
Oh, of course he did. He's going to hit probably 20 in Iowa before they call him up in like that 2 or 3 week span. Yeah, Kentucky has to beat 2 number 1 seeds to go, unless Michigan State beats Duke. Kentucky will have to beat 2 number 1 seeds to win the title. So they have to beat number 1 Wisconsin and then number 1 Duke in the championship game. You know, if it's Duke and Kentucky, I mean, it doesn't get much better than that as far as historic teams and as far as, you know, Mike Krzyzewski against John Calipari. I mean, that is just, you know, it doesn't get much better than that.
No, I mean, that's really probably 2 of the best coaches.
Right, and, you know, the one common denominator between all these Final Four teams, you know, Michigan State wasn't supposed to be here, but, you know,
the coaching got them there.
They have, you know, one of the best coaches, probably the best coach in the Big Ten, in Tom Izzo. So, I mean, they always are doing, you know, really good things, especially with Tom Izzo as their coach. And, you know, if you look at the coaches in this, you got Tom Izzo, Bo Ryan, Mike Krzyzewski, and John Calipari. I mean, you couldn't have scripted it any better as far as the coaches. That's the main reason why all 4 of them are here. Obviously, all the teams have NBA talent, too. But not as much as Kentucky. Kentucky's always got the most NBA talent.
Do you think Kentucky could beat Philadelphia or the Knicks?
No, because it's college. I mean, the NBA is so much better, and I mean, you know, the people on Philadelphia probably played against Kentucky, and you know, when they were in college. So, I don't think Kentucky would be able to beat. I don't think Kentucky would be able to beat any NBA team, because you know those NBA teams can score 100 points easily every night. At least most of them. Maybe not the Bulls, but most of the teams can score 100 points a game, and you know, in college you're only scoring 50 or 60.
Right. They also do play fewer minutes, though.
Yeah, they do play fewer minutes. It's 2, you know, the college game, as we know, is 2 20-minute halves, and the NBA is, 48 minutes altogether, something like that. 4 12-minute quarters. So, yeah, it's interesting, and then you got the whole minute. And then, I mean, NBA coaches, you know, I think they'd be able to handle the college players on the court, too. But yeah, Michigan State and Duke and Wisconsin and Kentucky. Kentucky is a 5-point favorite against Wisconsin. So we'll see if Kentucky can beat Wisconsin in this situation 2 years in a row. I'll be rooting for Wisconsin. They're my favorite team in the Big Ten, and they're you know, my favorite team in the tournament. I would like to see a Big Ten tournament rematch in the final because, of course, Wisconsin and Michigan State were in the Big Ten tournament final at the United Center about 3 weeks ago. So that could be really exciting to see them face off again in obviously a bigger stage in the championship. But what it's probably going to be, it'll probably end up being Duke and Kentucky. And then I'd be rooting for Duke, not because I like Duke, but because I want the streak to end. I don't want, you know, it's always fun to root for the underdog, you know, as it is.
Unless it's your team.
Yeah, unless it's your team. Yeah, but I think Wisconsin and Michigan State would be fun to watch as well. You know, 2 Big Ten teams in the championship game. That would be a real big, you know, a boost for the Big Ten. But so who are we going with in these 2 games? Are you going with Duke against Michigan State?
Well, the fact that my final 2 teams was Duke and Kentucky, with Duke winning.
All right, so you're going with Duke and Kentucky. I think Wisconsin is going to beat Kentucky, and
they've got a good chance. If Frank Kaminsky can take over that game, they do have a chance.
And,
however,
Sam Decker had a career high, like 27, 29 points in their last game against Arizona. So,
right. I mean, also throwing the fact that maybe John Capilari will have a defensive scheme to shut down Frank Kaminsky. We don't know. I mean, that's what good coaching will do.
Yeah, it's possible. He could definitely, you know, obviously, he's a great coach, and they'll be able to do it. But hopefully, Wisconsin's coach, Bo Ryan, hopefully he'll be able to, you know, sort of mask some of the stuff too, and it'll probably be a low-scoring defensive game because, especially if John Calipari shuts down Frank Kaminsky, you know, if his players shut down Frank Kaminsky, and then if Wisconsin's players shut down, you know, Willie Cauley-Stein or Aaron Harrison or, you know, their best players, and then it could really be a close defensive-like game. And, you know, all these guys are tall, too. I mean, Kentucky and Wisconsin are very tall, big teams, whereas Michigan State and Duke aren't as tall. Jaleel Okafor is tall, but besides that, they're more of a small guard, you know, shooting threes, Of course, Wisconsin shoots threes, but all these teams shoot really well.
The thing is,
that's why they're in the Final
Wisconsin
Four.
has big guys that can shoot threes.
Yeah, I mean, Kaminsky can shoot threes. Nigel Hayes, who is technically their center, he can shoot threes at will as well. And then you got Josh Gasser and Duje Dukin. Yeah, they're really good. Frank Kaminsky is from Lyle, Illinois, and Duje Dukin's from Deerfield. So they got a couple.
Why
Chicago
couldn't DePaul
areas.
have recruited these guys?
Yeah, why didn't DePaul get these guys? I don't know. DePaul just doesn't. I don't think Oliver Purnell would even have a chance, though. Now that Oliver Purnell's fired, we'll talk more about that later. Because of course he resigned from his position after 5 years.
Do you think he would have been fired?
Yeah, I think they gave him the choice to resign because I think they were going to fire him anyway. I thought they should have fired his ass anyway, though. Might as well, right? I mean, yeah, I'm pretty confident that they would have fired him. We'll talk more about that in the second hour, but yeah, Michigan State and Duke, Wisconsin and Kentucky.
Yeah, just think how bad it would be for
crazy.
Duke if they lose a close game in the finals. In the final game, if they lose a close one just because they kicked out that one guy out of the program.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And no one's really talking about that, but that's a good point. How far would Duke, how far can Duke go if they had their guy that they kicked out of the program? I'll find his name during break. I'm not 100% sure what his name is.
He's really good. He was a shooting guard.
Yeah. I mean, he was a starter. He started all their games. I don't know if he was necessarily ever going to be in the NBA, but he's a great college player. He got in some trouble doing some things. I don't know if it was academic or otherwise, but he didn't. He got suspended from the team, and he hasn't been back since. So it's going to be really interesting. I don't think he was
suspended. I think he was kicked out of the program.
Yeah, it was one or the other. We're not sure. I'll let everybody know when we get back from break. You're listening to the Sports Renegades here on SportsTownChicago.com. We'll be back. The Sports Renegades podcast on SportsTownChicago.com.